Hello, everyone. I'd like to introduce my good friend Alan Ogden. But before I do, I want you to know we're here to inform and educate you on health issues and possible solutions. We're not here to treat, diagnose, cure, or prescribe anything. For those concerns, it is best to consult your family physician. Now, let me share why I feel so confident in learning from Alan. Alan is a pharmacist, nutritionist, researcher, and genetic consultant. Alan studied at the University of Alberta, the University of Denver, the IHI in Phoenix, Alive Academy Vancouver, and the Research Institute at McGill University. So tonight, Alan, I'd like to talk about longevity. And I got the list of all these ingredients, and maybe you could explain. We'll start with the first one, making glutathione orally available. So help us out understand how longevity makes glutathione orally available.
Well, that's a good question. And let's talk about glutathione and is it generally available orally? The answer to that is not. It isn't available orally very often. So the glutathione that is in Lonicera Longevity, which you'll see as Cetria glutathione, I think it's listed as a separate ingredient, is actually there. It's actually what we use to trigger the manufacture of glutathione. So if somebody has a bottle of Longevity in front of them, they'll see under the proprietary ingredients, there's a whole list of amino acids. So glutamine, glycine, L-cysteine, those are actually what make glutathione. Our body is genetically programmed. Every cell in our body is genetically programmed to manufacture its own glutathione. And it's manufactured for us. So my glutathione is of little value to Al Beal or to anyone else for that matter. Our glutathione is as individual as we are. It actually has the ability to modulate itself with our experiences in life. So as we're exposed to different challenges, different diseases, different stresses, our glutathione will actually itself learn what we need to store in our white blood cells, which is the main storage mechanism for and reserve for our immune response. And there's lots of different types of white blood cells. When we have a blood cell count, they'll have your white blood cell count, and then they'll maybe separate it out into your eosinophils and your neutrophils. And so they separate it out into different classes because they actually have different actions in our immune system. But all of those are controlled ultimately by glutathione. And every cell has to make glutathione first for its own use internally. So the purpose of a cell, if we look at a cell, the purpose of a cell is literally to manufacture energy or heat. That's what keeps us warm, manufacture heat in our body. Then we manufacture protein because everything we do in our body involves a protein of some kind. So even when you're blinking your eyes like you are, Al, that involves the change in the structure of proteins. And as we change the structure of proteins throughout our body, that also generates a little bit of excess oxygen, which is called free radical oxygen or oxidative stress. There's many scientific names for it, but it's just the release as bonds, different bonds release, oxygen, hydrogen, or carbon is released. And then those things have to be reattached to something before they do damage in the body. So glutathione's first purpose is to protect this process of cellular regeneration. So the last thing a cell does, of course, is regenerate itself. And we know that it divides into two. And even though we might say to somebody we're X number of years old, our body literally is about a year old because we have replaced all of the cells in our body, with the exception of some neurons, but pretty much all the other cells in our body have been replaced. Over a period of 7 years, we now know that we've also replaced the majority of our neurons. We didn't think neurons were actually, we thought brain cells were there for life. We now know from the work of Dr. Daniel Amen and other people that we can we can have traumatic brain injury, and we can actually regrow brain cells, and that there is some turnover in brain cells as a natural part of life. So the first job of glutathione is internally, and that's a genetically controlled process. It takes 3 amino acids and a trigger mechanism. So the cetriaglutathione actually stimulates the uptake of the amino acids and the production of glutathione within the cell. It's actually like poking the bear a little bit. It's there to sort of aggravate the cell a little bit, so it'll uptake amino acids and generate glutathione. We cannot overproduce glutathione because it is genetically controlled. The amount of glutathione that we have in our body is genetically controlled. We can, however, recycle our glutathione more efficiently and more effectively, and we'll talk about that as we go through these ingredients. So the orally, if you go to the store and you just pick up a bottle of L-glutathione, it's only about 10% absorbed. So a 500 milligram capsule would give you maybe 50 milligrams of glutathione. It takes about 200 milligrams of glutathione to actually trigger an immunological response in our body. We have in Lonicera Longevity, we've accommodated enough of the amino acids, just a little bit of the cetriaglutathione, 100 milligrams as the trigger mechanism, and then enough of the amino acids to generate about a gram of glutathione, which is approximately what we recycle on a daily basis in our body.
So what do you mean by, we talk about cetri and it says reduced form of glutathione. So what is reduced form of glutathione versus another standard form of glutathione?
So the reduced form means that it has no activity. And we hold most of our glutathione like that in our body. 90% of our glutathione is held as reduced. The other is active, or it's oxidized. It means it's picked up oxygen molecules. And a glutathione molecule can pick up a lot of oxygen from our body. If we compare it to other antioxidants like vitamin C, which is one of the main antioxidants in our body, vitamin C or vitamin E, they can pick up one free radical. So whether that's an active, and mostly it's an active oxygen molecule. When we're talking about free radicals, we're talking about a free oxygen molecule. Those are very dangerous to the tissues of our body. Think about hydrogen peroxide, which is H2O2. That's an extra oxygen attached to water, and we use it as a disinfectant. Or we use a higher strength of H2O2 when people are dyeing their hair to bleach, literally bleach our hair. So we can understand just from H2O2, you maybe had a little bit too much bleaching, Al, just in passing.
I see that. See?
Yeah. But H2O2, we know how damaging that is. So it gives us a little measure to understand how damaging oxygen can be if it accumulates in the body. So the oxidized form of glutathione doesn't last very long, and only about 10% of our glutathione is actually oxidized at any one time. Now, if we could, and it's been tried, if we could give the body actually oxidized glutathione, it would be absorbed immediately. We've tried it as a skin cream. We've tried it in many different ways. But the challenge with that is as it comes into the reduced form, it releases a sulfur molecule. So you actually smell like an oil well if you are using oxidized glutathione. So we literally have to figure out how to use reduced glutathione that'll pass the cell wall. That process will still happen, but it happens inside the cell, inside the body, so we don't end up releasing that sulfur molecule, which is very, just not very tantalizing to smell like sulfur. So yes, that's my story.
I appreciate the fact that we don't walk around smelling like an old gas well or oil well.
Yes,
but anyways,
that's for sure.
The next product in there is Lonicera Longevity, is Lonicera berry. So why did we put the Lonicera berry in the longevity along with the glutathione?
I'm just going to back up for 1 second. Why did we use Cetria glutathione? Cetria is a brand name. It's made by a Japanese company, Kyohaka, and they're really one of the people who are at the forefront of researching this reduced glutathione and making sure that it's active in the body. And so we've piggybacked on their research to know exactly what that glutathione is doing in our body, that it's not causing any harm. It's actually doing what we want it to do, which is trigger the manufacture of glutathione inside the cells. So Lonicera, the Lonicera berry is a story in and of itself. Years ago, when antioxidants became the rage, so that was about in the 90s, early 90s to the late 1990s, all of a sudden this terminology came into the awareness of everybody. And we had a scale back then called the ORAC scale, which stands for oxygen reducing and absorbing capacity. Now, the ORAC scale actually had nothing to do with humans. It was actually it came from the Department of Agriculture, and they were using it to determine how much different things they could expose a cow that's being milked, how much they could give that cow and still maintain the viability of the milk. So there was a scale of these things, and they just kind of co-adapted that to humans. And they said, well, okay, if we have this free radical damage that's going on in our body, which it is all the time. So we're all subject to some free radical or free oxygen damage. That's just a natural part of life. We're oxygen consuming machines. So we're going to have the results of that. We're going to have these free radical oxygen molecules. So the whole idea became, well, we've got to get rid of this oxygen. Time magazine released a cover story in 2004 and said inflammation, the root cause of all disease. And so there was this big thrust in the nutrition community, not so much in the medical community, because in the medical community, we don't really have anything to modulate our immune system. We have things to stop our immune system. One of the things, chemotherapy is meant to stop our immune system. We have things to override our immune system, like prednisone, where it will actually take the place of our immune system, but we don't really have anything that will balance or modulate the immune system. And that's one of the things glutathione helps to modulate the immune system. And then when we add a free radical, or when we add a product that has antioxidants in it, so antioxidants, the purpose of them is to help absorb or mop up some of this free radical oxygen that's in our body. And we can do that very quickly. So that kind of takes the burden off of our glutathione. And why would we want to take the burden off glutathione if it's the number one thing that we were made with in creation to handle reactive oxygen? Well, our exposure over time has become very severe. We're constantly exposed to exterior sources through toxins, through chemicals, through all sorts of things that will actually show up in our body and damage our tissues. And so taking antioxidants became this, well, let's take a whole bunch of antioxidants. And at one time, people were taking things with an ORAC score of 70,000 per dose. And then they thought, well, the more you take, the better it is for you. And actually, Health Canada kind of stepped in. And sometimes Health Canada does actually do something that is health related. And they stepped in and said, no, whoa, just stop for a minute. We couldn't use the term antioxidant in Canada till 2005 or 2006, somewhere in there, because they wanted to study it and go, no, we can actually, and they came out with a discussion paper saying, you can take too many antioxidants. So when you're loading the body like that, you're actually getting to the point where you're stressing your immune system. So that led us to look at, well, what does nature use to handle free radicals? And the Lonicera berry is about 4.5 times stronger than blueberries. So blueberries kind of became the standard in the industry for antioxidants. Eat your cup of blueberries a day, get your antioxidants. And here was Lonicera berry, which is native to Canada. Nobody was using it. And we're the first company to use Lonicera berry. So we don't have to use as much Lonicera berry as any other antioxidant. And it works in conjunction with your glutathione. So it'll mop up a bunch of oxygen molecules and help them be disseminated out through your body. And it takes the pressure off your immune system. So that's one of the reasons we put it in there.
So what are some of the benefits of having an optimal glutathione level?
Well, when you tie these things together, you have your optimum glutathione level. Then that means your immune system can handle all the functions it has to handle. I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand. We have our immune system divided into basically into three parts in our body. So in our blood, we have uric acid, and uric acid is there as our first line of defense against bacteria, against viruses, against intruders. Uric acid is an integral part of our immune system. But uric acid, if that gets out of control, then we have gout, and we have other challenges from the uric acid. So it has to be it's an integral part of our immune response, uric acid. Then we have glutathione, which is the mother of that response. So when our body is exposed to something, glutathione is the measure. When glutathione is stressed to a certain point, it will trigger a genetic reaction called a NRF2, NRF2, and that's a genetic call to all parts of the immune system to come together and just be ready to work. And they don't know where they're going yet. They don't know what they're doing, but all parts of our immune system are on notice. And that's a very quick reaction. And then we have a third immune system in our brain. So our brain actually, we have our overall body immune system, which is glutathione and uric acid. And then we actually have a separate glutathione triggered immune system in our brain. And the reason for that is our brain is a huge consumer of oxygen. Brain uses using our brain, and sometimes we think people don't use their brain. We kind of accuse them of that, and I understand that. But our brain is a huge consumer of our energy. People will come home from work and they'll be tuckered. It's actually their brain that's tired, but the brain has consumed so much energy that their body can't keep up. Our brain can use 30 to 40% of our total energy requirement for a day. So if we have a really difficult job where it takes a lot of brain focus, and there's lots of those. You think of people like nurses that work 12-hour shifts, or doctors that work incredibly long shifts, or people that are on shift work at all, first responders that have to be, instantaneously at full go. So that requires a lot of mental energy, and our brain becomes the highest consumer of oxygen. So we actually have a separate way of handling that oxygen stress in our brain, and glutathione is the integral part of that. So when we take something like Lonicera berry, we actually can de-stress a lot of the body processes, the cardiovascular system, the nervous system, etc., and that allows our glutathione to actually be more protective in our brain and our cognition functions and so on.
So how does the maquai, I don't know if that's pronounced properly.
Oh, maqui.
Maqui berry? That's how you pronounce it?
Maqui berry, yeah.
Maqui berry.
So that's
how does that fit into the picture?
Well, it's definitely not native to North America. It's actually native to South America. So it came up through South America. It was a very common berry, and basically it was in the Mexican or Latino traditions. Maqui berry was the berry you gave anybody that was sick. So it didn't matter what they were sick with, you'd give them maqui berry. And it's from a class of compounds called adaptogens. So adaptogens are this unique, really misunderstood category of natural chemicals. They are chemicals, natural chemicals that exist in plants like rhodiola, ginseng, maqui berry. And they're called adaptogens because when our body is stressed, whether that's mental stress, physical stress, whatever stress we're under, an adaptogen will literally be a support mechanism for whatever it is we need. So it can induce, say, your uptake of oxygen. So if you're really stressed at something, the maqui berry will help your body uptake oxygen. If it's mental stress, it will help with the simulation of choline and other things in your brain to help your cognition. So it's overall just a really it's a way to help your body adapt in stressful situations. But when we're chronically ill, and this is something that I think a lot of people don't think about, is how much strain you think of your body being. So you feel pain in your body, and we have something, and we give it a name. I'm just going to use arthritis as an example. So the pain isn't in our brain. The pain is in our body, but we don't realize how much stress that's actually causing in our brain. So something like maki berry then will help our brain to cool off and calm down. While it might help with the pain reduction a tiny bit, it will actually help our brain be more functional during times of like that of pain or trauma or other stresses. And that's what adaptogens do. Where adaptogens became really well known was back in the 80s. A lot of people will remember that. Well, if they're older like you and I, Al, they'll remember. But the Romanians, the Czechoslovakians, back then it was Czechoslovakia, they were just winning all of the Olympic medals. They were beating everybody and setting new records. And they had discovered the use of rhodiola. And rhodiola is used in one of our other products, actually used in Lyft. But rhodiola, it was an adaptogen they were taking. And so rhodiola was helping them with their oxygen uptake and helping them with the whole mental stress of being in competition and enabling them to win a lot of these gold medals. So maki berry is very similar to rhodiola in that instance.
Yeah, I think our Edmonton Oilers could use some of that stuff,
Yeah,
they're having a few challenges. Anyways, what about why are we using organic rice in this in longevity?
So when you're putting ingredients that are from different sources and you're trying to get them into a capsule, you have to use some kind of agent. It's like a lubricant. It's like it takes the surface tension away from these ingredients and allows them to mix. So the common ones would be a silicate. So silicon dioxide, magnesium dioxide. Generally what they use is the chemical because they're cheap. So lots of supplements, you'll read on the bottle, it'll say magnesium dioxide or silicon or something like that. And because we want to make vegan and as chemical-free products as we can, but we still need a flow agent of some kind to make these flow into a capsule, we use the rice concentrate for that. Rice concentrate. When we eat rice, we go to the restaurant, we order rice, and we'll often order sticky rice. And people, I know too much stuff, I guess, in my brain, but sticky rice is because they've actually released this ingredient that we're using as the lubricant, right? It makes the rice kind of stick together. It actually makes it taste a little better too. But we can take that extract and we can use it then as a lubricant for all these ingredients. So next time you're eating sticky rice, you'll think of the medicinal use of that stickiness.
I'll think of longevity and it pouring into the capsules at the factory. Anyways, what about this bioenhanced stabilized R-lipoic acid?
So when you have R in front of something, so there's two forms they're called dimers. So it's just, once again, scientists have to make things complicated so they have a reason to exist. And we can't say active and inactive. So the D, if you see something that says D alpha lipoic acid, it means that it's not active in the human body. Often we'll use something that isn't active because we want it to be activated in the body. So we don't want it active out in the atmosphere because then it loses its potency. So we may use something in that instance where it's like it has the D form. They're actually mirror images of a molecule. So the L and the D they're mirror images. But for the most part, anything that says D in front of it usually means it's not active, an active ingredient. So the L is just the part of that molecule that we can say, oh, that is shaped in a way that the human body can use it. It can go through tissues, it can be absorbed, and it can be used. So when we look at this bioenhanced stabilized, what that means is we've added they've taken alpha lipoic acid, which is very difficult for us to ingest and digest without it getting destroyed in our stomach acid. The only place we can actually use lipoic acid that hasn't been stabilized is if we use it topically, because our skin will take it and activate it. Sun will activate it. So it's kind of like vitamin D. You know, we want to go out and get out in the sun so the vitamin D can be activated in our body. And alpha lipoic acid is kind of like that. So we want to get it into the body and then have it active in the body. So you have to stabilize it. And we can use different things to do that. Usually it's a molecule, I'm going to say a lipid, which means a fat molecule. But these are very, very tiny, tiny, tiny molecules. We're not talking about anything that would affect a dietary source of fat or anything. These are tiny little molecules of that. They actually would flush out in water, really, if when they're ingested. So it's just a way to get them into the tissues and get the lipoic acid. Now, alpha lipoic acid has its own activity when it gets into tissues. It's really good for strengthening cellular membranes, right? So one of the things I mentioned at the start that our body's only about a year old from a cellular point of view. So as a cell reaches its expiration point, so if it's a red blood cell, for instance, it's about 90 days, and the red blood cell is going to apoptose, which means it's going to break apart. And the cell membrane is where it starts to deteriorate the first. So the process inside with the mitochondria slows down, its energy production slows down, but eventually what happens is the cell membrane breaks, boom, it's gone. So we don't want that happening at a rate that's faster than what we're genetically programmed to do. So if we can give something that will stabilize the cell membrane and keep that cell as strong and healthy for as long as we can. So just where is this really applicable? So somebody that has had cancer, they'll understand that cancer cells are a mutated cell and they're very tough. And one of the things about cancer cells is their membrane, their cellular membrane, is very, very stable. It's very tough. That's why it's hard to treat cancer. It's made out of our own genetics, but the cellular membrane part doesn't deteriorate like a normal cell. And what cancer will do is actually suck the glutathione out of healthy cells. That's why people with cancer get looking so gaunt and so tired and right. They're literally losing the immune system and the defense mechanisms out of their healthy cell. So if we can actually make their cells healthier and they can hang on to that, what will happen is the rate at which cancer is actually, it's exponentially replicating itself. It will burn itself out. If we can keep the healthy cells healthy during somebody's cancer, then the cancer itself will burn itself out. And that's alpha lipoic acid is something that will help stabilize cellular membranes.
So what about Seleno XL? I mean, I've heard about, taking selenium supplements, and how is this different than taking a standard selenium supplement?
So selenium is a very interesting molecule. It's a trace mineral that we need. It's actually a catalyst for many of the energy producing activities in our body, but it's easy to get too much selenium. And so why we do this is a form of selenium that if your body doesn't need selenium, it won't utilize yeast selenium. So it can be, if you need it, you can use it. If you don't need it, you don't. So where do we get selenium in nature? Well, if you eat one Brazil nut, it has about 700 micrograms of selenium in it. That selenium is like this selenium. So you're not endangering your life by eating Brazil nuts, because the selenium, even though you might be getting way over the 400 micrograms that's recommended, you might be getting thousands of micrograms if you really like Brazil nuts or nuts in general. They have this type of selenium in it that your body will activate and use, and if it doesn't need it, it doesn't use it. So it's kind of a protective mechanism. We need selenium as a trigger. We need it there for all these energy producing processes, but we don't want to overburden the body with. So if you look at if you take, we're talking about Lonicera longevity, but if we looked on there and it just said selenium, then that means it's manufactured selenium, and that's the stuff you have to be really careful in the dosing of that, because if you get over 400 micrograms of that selenium, it can start doing tissue damage instead of helping your body. So this just avoids that.
So when we have this with our glutathione and antioxidant, how does the selenium kind of work with the glutathione enhancing part of?
Well, we put it in there.
And same with the.
We put it in there because if we look at the dietary habits of, if we just look at the spectrum of people, we know that kids' dietary habits are terrible, generally speaking, unless their parents are really supervising them. And then we look at elderly people who are unsupervised. Nobody's looking after them. And so we know that these people are probably really short of trace minerals, which is why we put selenium in there. And that's why we use centrum in as an ingredient as well in lots of our products. It's just to get the trace minerals that people need, because we know that they can be easily missing from their diet, and we want to make sure. So selenium is necessary when you're manufacturing. It helps with the enzymatic process of manufacturing glutathione. So we don't need much selenium, but we got to put these amino acids together. So we have 3 amino acids. We have glutamate and we have cysteine. They're the two, and we have receptor sites for these amino acids on the cell membrane. So this doesn't happen by accident. Once again, this is a genetically controlled process. We have receptor sites. We can hold so much glutamine. We can hold so much cysteine being the rate limiting. So we have less receptor sites for cysteine. But once cysteine is on a receptor, then we trigger, if we have selenium, it'll trigger the enzyme called glutamal cystyl synthetase. So that means we can attach glutamine and cysteine together and make them into one molecule. And as soon as that molecule is made, it triggers another enzymatic reaction, which is glutathione synthetase. That adds in glycine. So that process is dependent, that first initial process is actually dependent on selenium. And yes, vegans can take our products. All of our products are vegan friendly, as that came up in the chat.
So what about trace minerals? Like what's so unique about these type of trace minerals versus other types?
There's a variety of trace minerals we need in our body for various functions. We use different ones for cognition than we do for energy production. There's about 70 just for cognition. There's over 70 minerals that we utilize, and we utilize them over and over for neural transmission, for energy production. And so what centrumin is, it's actually 75 natural minerals that exist just in nature. This is a product that we get from Utah. It's been clinically proven to have all the minerals that we need to activate these processes and act as catalysts for every process in our bodies. So it isn't sort of exclusive to the glutathione manufacturer, but it's just making sure that people have all of these trace minerals that we need, like molybdenum and many that we can't pronounce, that vanadium and things that we need, just tiny little bits of. And so why not go to nature and say, well, how does nature deliver these to plants? And then the plants are eaten by animals. So how is nature doing that? And we just found a product that's in nature. You can get it from another place you could get it from is in Alberta. When they used to strip mine for coal, the peat moss, it was very rich in something called humic and fulvic acid, and it's the same idea. That's very full of trace minerals, and they would actually harvest that humic and fulvic acid, and that would be used mostly in animal food. We didn't think humans needed it, but now we definitely know they do. So that's why it's in there.
Yeah. So what about Silifos? Or maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong.
Well, yeah, it's a hard one to get your tongue around because it's actually a combination molecule. Silifos is a combination of silymarin, which is milk thistle extract. So many people might know that milk thistle extract has been used for years in the medical profession to help increase liver function. So if you've had fatty liver disease, or if you've been a smoker all your life, or if you've been a drinker all your life and you're trying to change your life, a natural product advisor might say, well, you know what, you should take some milk thistle because we want to get your liver functioning more efficiently and more effectively. The liver is an amazing organ in our body, and the fact that it's the only one that can regenerate itself. We can give 65% of our liver to somebody else, and they become an alcoholic too. No, I'm just kidding. They don't. They don't. They actually grow a new liver. And then, we give 65% of it away and we grow a whole new liver. So it's a regenerative. It's the only organ in our body that we know that can regenerate to that extent. Other organs can also regenerate, but liver can regenerate at a tremendous a volume. And so this is a combination. So it's the silymarin, the milk thistle extract, which if you go on and you read about milk thistle extract, you'll see there's a lot of controversy. Does it really work? We don't have really solid clinical trial evidence, but we do have a lot of practical evidence for particularly in drug rehab or alcohol in rehab situations where we use milk thistle. It seems to have some effect on people and help them survive longer. And then we've combined it with a phospholipid, so phosphatidylcholine. And phosphatidylcholine is one of the main molecules that we use, or choline itself is one of our main molecules that we use in cognition. And we can't just eat choline. It has to be attached. It can't cross the blood-brain barrier, so it has to be attached to a phospholipid. So that's why we use phosphatidylcholine. It helps with cognition, also helps with liver function. So people know that there's a great connection between your gut or your digestive tract and your brain function. And choline is used in both areas. It's more prominently promoted for cognition function, but as a link between the two. Let's not forget that we have somewhere between 70 and 80,000 neurons right here in our solar plexus. People, when they say they get a gut feeling about something, right? We have a small portion of brain tissue right in our solar plexus. So it's, we'll feel our emotions in our solar plexus area, and that's actually. So we need choline, besides our brain, we need choline for the neural tissue throughout our body and our nerve function as well.
So, and how does that work with the glutathione?
Well, they're complementary in the fact glutathione is sort of the foundation. Glutathione is essential for the life of a cell. And then the other things we're putting there are their nutrition, that once you have balanced or modulated glutathione, what we're trying to do is just make sure the cell is healthy enough to do its function. So we give it trace minerals. We give it something to increase the strength of the cellular membrane. We give it adaptogens to help with any kind of physical or mental, any stress that it's under. So really, it's about the cellular health. So this isn't just this formula isn't just about making glutathione. There are products that are literally they're made for just making glutathione, and there's nothing wrong with optimizing your glutathione, but why not make sure that the whole cell is healthy and add to the glutathione as well? So that's why these things are in here. And then vitamin D3. We all know that it's cellular protective. So it's not in there in big quantities. It's just there as an adjunct, once again, with the whole goal of making a healthy cell. So glutathione, Lonicera Longevity, its main function is to modulate. And I want to make sure people understand this term modulate, because once again, in the medical profession, we don't have anything that modulates the immune system. We have things that depress the immune system, or we have things that boost the immune system. And ultimately, if you want a great functioning immune system, you want both. You want, it's like a teeter-totter, right? So if your immune system is out of balance, you know, you're arthritic or your cancer, whatever's out of balance. We want to modulate the immune system and give it flexibility. And that's why we optimize glutathione, because it modulates the activity of the immune system. It doesn't make it overreactive, and it helps it not be underreactive. And then we want to make every cell that has glutathione, and they all do, we want to keep it as healthy as long as its lifespan is. So in our eyes, for instance, they're cellular, the whole eye turns around, the vitreous fluid turns around about every 2 days, about every 48 hours. You have a whole new level of vitreous fluid in your eyes. Your skin's 21 days, you know, your red blood cells 90 days, your bones take about a year. So while we are using those cells, we want them to be as strong and healthy as they can. And so this is a multi-purpose formula. While glutathione is its priority, we really are focusing on having a healthy cell, because healthy cells give us healthy organs give us a healthy organism.
Well, thank you very much, Alan. I've learned a lot, and I think everybody else on this broadcast has learned a lot as well. And I appreciate everything you taught us this evening. And hopefully everybody will get their longevity, and now they have a better understanding of why they're taking it and how it works. And my understanding too in my studies is that when you understand how something works and how it benefits you, then it even benefits you more, because you understand how the whole process. There's some psychological aspect to it that I think is great as well. So anyways, thank you very much, and we'll talk to you another day.
Okay, thank you for taking the time.
Thanks a lot.
For everyone.